So, as brilliant and incredible technology that ChatGPT and these other large language models that we've come to know, in Gemini, Claude, Grok are, they are closed models. And there's a lot of news coming out, and it's becoming increasingly so that you still have to be mindful of what you're putting into these different chats. And so news came out recently that ChatGPT, your conversations are actually being indexed by Google, the conversations that you share on the site. You have a specific choice. Let's say you're within a chat on ChatGPT at the top right. If you click on share, you can have it so that the chat gets shared publicly. And it turns out that these shared chats were actually showing up on Google. So if you're putting in private information, or if it was very personal, then and somebody was looking up that information on Google, or just looking up the topics you were talking about on Google, it was actually appearing in the search results, which was a terrible feature, because I believe it was actually a feature that ChatGPT had. But it turns out that a couple of days later, they've actually now rescinded that. That's no longer happening. But it does beg the case that you have to be mindful of what you're putting up on ChatGPT. The other thing is Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, announced that everything you tell ChatGPT could be used against you in a court of law. And so, if you're obviously talking about anything that may get you in trouble or be illegal, uh, or even just if you are putting information into ChatGPT that's sensitive, understanding that that could come back, and that is now something that could be used in the future. And so I say that to say that, of course, you've got these different APIs with the large language models, and whether it's for business use cases, whether it's for personal projects, whether it's for your day to day, you in the workplace, they are great to use, and they're great to use in those contexts. However, when it comes to very personal information, something that isn't being talked about enough is the opportunity and the idea of using locally sourced, open source, locally run large language models. And so in this video, I wanted to just touch upon what that is: open source and locally run models, meaning models run literally on your computer, that are private and secure to your computer, don't go to any outside servers. And so whatever you put into the model, it stays on your computer, and you can put whatever private information, or personal information that you may want. And so I have here OLLama. OLLama.com is one of actually a couple of different platforms that you could use to download these models. And so just to touch upon open source AI is AI where the source code that went into building the models are open. They're open to the general public, and you can literally download these models to your computer. So on OLLama, for example, if I click on Qwen, which has become a popular model in the last few weeks, it's now state of the art. It's competing against some of the best large language models, especially the coding models, Sonnet 4, O3. If I click on Qwen, you can see all the different versions of Qwen that are available to download. If I click on models at the top left here, you can see all the different models in general. I mean, hundreds and thousands of models we're talking about, from Qwen to Meta's Llama, to Mistral, to DeepSeek. And this is becoming more important to discuss because the open source models typically have lagged significantly behind the closed source models. But with these Chinese based companies, China made companies, with Qwen, with Kimi, with DeepSeek, the models are starting to catch up to the closed source US models. And again, the importance of these open source LLMs is the fact that you can actually download it to your computer. And so one might ask, then why don't we just use the open source? Well, you have to also realize, and if I click on Qwen 3, you can see here the size of them. So they vary in size. So for example, if I were to download Qwen 3 8B, which is the latest that it has here. It's 5 gigabytes. Context size is 40K, so it's a much smaller context size that to the Qwen that you would use in the cloud, which I believe actually has a million uh, context size, which is the number of tokens, and that it would be a pro, let's say, using it in the cloud in the traditional kind of way. And then you have, let's say, Qwen 3 is 235 billion parameter, and the size of that's 142 gigabytes. Right, so that's huge, and you probably wouldn't be able to run that larger context window, but you would then need more compute power for it to be possible to use. And so again, the way I see it right now for these open source models is on a day to day, if you have general queries that you want to make and you have personal sensitive information, you can just download one of these models. There's so many to choose from, right? And you can look at what, let's pull up Gemma right here, which is I believe Google, which is one of Google's models. You have a lot to choose from, and they all vary in size, and you can find one that fits, that's going to fit right for you. And so how do you do this? How do you run one of these open source models on your computer? Well, if you go to OLLama.com, at the top right, you're going to click on download. So you're going to download the OLLama app to your computer. You're going to download from Mac. And so I'd already downloaded it. So I'm just showing this for demonstration. And just like how you download any other app, you're just going to click on it, and then you're going to move it into the applications folder, and then it's going to pull up one of those download installation icons and go through that process of just installing an app on your computer, of how you install any app. And then once you have it on your computer, which I already do have it, you're going to click on the OLLama icon, and this is going to pull up. OLLama actually just upgraded its interface to where so you can actually use these different models. They have a couple already sort of preloaded here, and you can type it into the chat box like you would ChatGPT. But then this something like this is running on their servers, but you're able to use it in this kind of way. What we're talking about, however, is actually like running it on your computer. So the way to do that is you're going to pull up the terminal of your computer. The terminal of your computer is where you're able to run different commands to control files and control your computer, control files and control your computer through code. And so you're going to click on terminal. You can find it within, I'm on a Mac, but if you go onto Launchpad, or it may already be on the toolbar at the bottom, you're going to pull up that terminal. And if you've used platforms like the AI Copilot Cursor, then you may already be familiar with the terminal. If you're technical, then you probably, I'm sure, have used the terminal of your computer, but this is an opportunity to do so. And I promise it's only a couple of steps here. So once you have OLLama on your computer, you're going to type in OLLama. That's gonna, if you've had it downloaded onto your computer, this will come up here where it shows the available commands that you can use in running the different models. And it's kind of like a menu of sorts, if you will. And then from there, you can actually just go ahead and run a model. So I'm gonna actually run something that is already on my computer, because that's sort of like one of the things I'm focused on, right? One of the models I'm focused on right now. So the Qwen model, for example, as I mentioned, Qwen is now state of the art and has caught up to the closed source state of the art models. We're going to see what, kind of where that goes next. But if you type in OLLama run and then space the model you want to use. So in my case, I'll be talking about, so if I go back to OLLama, click on models, I click on Qwen 3, and I see, okay, Qwen 3 colon 8B latest. I'm going to type in Qwen 3 colon 8B. So run Qwen 3 colon 8B. You're going to click enter, and it'll actually then go and download that model onto your computer. So now, again, it's 5 gigabytes, which isn't crazy. And if you hadn't downloaded it yet, it's probably going to take a couple of minutes for it to go through. And then you'll see here, send a message, and you can now literally chat with this terminal the way you would chat on ChatGPT, or the way you would chat on Gemini. And so if I were to, let's say, put a query in and ask it to explain open source models and locally run LLMs for me. Can you explain what an open source LLM is and what it means to run it locally? If I type that in, these local run models typically they're gonna operate slower, right, than the closed source models for the most part. But it's also ranges to it again depending on the size, depending on the parameter. You have the different context windows, and then the amount of compute power that you also have is going to determine what you're able to download onto your computer. But we're talking about private information or very sensitive information that you don't want to share, personal information you don't want to share on these LLMs. You can just download one of these local models here and chat with it on this from this perspective. And then you'll see in the case of Qwen, this is a Qwen 3. It's a reasoning model. So it's actually the light gray here is it reasoning, right? It's showing, okay, thinking, okay, the user is asking about open source large language models and what it means to run them locally. Let me start by breaking down the key terms here first. So this is him reasoning, and then the black is the actual response, where it's giving it to you in a structured manner. What is an open source LLM? An open source LLM is a type of AI model designed to understand and generate human-like text. The key distinction is that the code and training data, or at least parts of them, are publicly available under open source licenses. And then it gives you examples: llama, Hugging Face, transformers. What does it mean to run it locally? Running an LLM locally means deploying the model on your own device, a computer, a server, an edge device, rather than on a remote cloud server. This has several implications: privacy, your data stays on your device, customization, so on and so forth. And so you're able to use this model literally on your computer, and you no longer have to worry about the privacy issues and like, where is the information going? And even though OpenAI says that they're not sharing it, or says that they're not collecting your data, how can you be sure? Well, you no longer have to worry about that if you're running a model locally. And so that is open source and local LLMs. You can also take it further than this, and in future videos we can discuss, if that interest is there, around how you can take this model and actually use it in your own applications, or take it and connect it to other applications that you have if you're working on a project, and you want to, let's say, create a bot, or you want to kind of modify the model. Like, that's one of the cool parts of these open source models, and that you can, because the source code is available, you can modify it and create your own model, for example, or your own version of the model. And so there's some pretty cool things that you can do with it. And I believe that open source models, locally run models, and also like decentralized AI, to where you're leveraging these open source models and it's not all connected to one s- entity like an OpenAI or a Gemini, or Google. I believe that's going to become increasingly talked about, and a theme as sensitivities around LLMs continue to grow, and you see more news come out, like what has come out uh, in the past few days. So that's it: open source and locally run models.